Hey guys, Stuart here. So we had a question coming in from Matthew Dewberry, who was asking about the structure of races at university compared to races at schools and like through the junior age groups at Tunbridge as well, and then also about general experiences of running at university and what the training is like there. So a little background about myself, Matthew. I actually went to Judd, same as you, and then I went off to Loughborough University for 3 years and trained, studied, and competed there for the 3 years I was there. So I'll start off with the cross-country season in terms of the racing schedule that I had, and then I'll kind of compare it to what other unis are like as well. So at Loughborough University, our main races throughout the season were the league races. So like how we have Kent Leagues for Tunbridge, whichever region you are in, whichever university you go to, they'll enter you into the main league there. So at Loughborough, we entered the Birmingham League and we competed there. I think they're about once a month, so like the Kent Leagues, and they're quite evenly spaced throughout the season. So those were like it was a nice structure to have, like a very regular racing schedule with those. But then obviously towards the end of the season or kind of mid-season, you have the Bucks Cross Country Championships. They're at the end of January or beginning of February. So they're normally just after Southern Cross Country Championships and a few weeks before the Nationals. So you've got a bit of time in between those big championship races to taper for them. But in terms of other races that other universities might compete in, so some universities, so if you go to Oxford, for example, they have quite a big rivalry with Cambridge. So you'll have the varsity matches to compete in there. At Loughborough, we didn't actually have a varsity match that I know of in the cross-country season. We had one in the track season that I'll get to later. But yeah, so you have things like that to compete in between those league races. You'll sometimes have one-off races. So we had a few relays that we were competing. So we had like a road relay, we had a cross-country relay, and those were kind of dotted in between those league races as well. And so obviously you're at Judd, so you know what it's like to have a busy racing schedule. I remember we'd race on a Wednesday for Judd, then we have a race for Saturday for TAC, things like that. So if you're used to racing and keeping busy, don't feel like just because there's not many races going on at university that you won't be as busy, because you can always go back to compete for Tunbridge if you want to. So if you're not living too far away from home, you can always go back for the weekend and compete in a Kent League. I did that a few times, and I went to Loughborough, which was about 3 hours away, and I'd actually go back and compete in a Kent League sometimes just because I fancied a race. And the times of the league races match up quite nicely as well, because they're not always on the same weekend, so you can afford to actually, you could race Tunbridge one weekend, then Loughborough or whichever university the next weekend. So that's the cross-country season. One thing I will note is that I think you'll find this in general when you go to university, whichever one you're at, the standard tends to increase quite a lot. I remember it being quite a shock for me, because obviously you're used to under 17, under 20 being right at the top of the race, kind of top 10, top 5, things like that. And then you go to university and suddenly you're in the senior age groups, and you're competing with all these experienced runners, and you're a bit further back in the field, which is really good experience, but it does come as a bit of a shock. But don't just try to think of it as really good experience for then championship races, to use that and take it on going forward. So that's the cross country season from my perspective. Hope I outlined that okay for you. In terms of the track season, there's obviously lots of opportunities to compete in as well. So in my experience, Loughborough, they put on quite a few open meets every week, every other week from like May onwards. But I think you'll find, in terms of universities finish a lot earlier than schools do. So you'll actually end up finishing mid-June, sometimes even start of June. And then once you finish university, you'll be back at home. So you'll be back in the regular schedule, running and training at TAC. So you have all the open meets that you're used to there, because you have about 2 months over summer off from university. So in terms of the track season, it's not too different. I'd recommend looking into joining the BMC, like the British Milers Club, and entering those races, because they're dotted all around the country. So if you ever fancy a race, they're really regular. They're sometimes fortnightly, weekly races that you can take part in, and they're always very high standard if you want to chase the time. And one thing I'll just touch on the training side of university. From my own experience at Loughborough, obviously it's quite a sporting university, so it's very similar to what we have at Tunbridge, whereby we have Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. We followed that pretty much exact same schedule. So we'd have a big session on Tuesday, normally on the track or on the roads, and then we'd have a kind of tempo run Thursday, or if you don't fancy it, you don't have to, you can just do a steady run. And then we'd have a big cross-country session on a Saturday or a track session on a Saturday, depending on the season we're in. And then in between those, you have just easy runs dotted in between. But what I will note about university is it's incredibly easy to meet up with people for runs. So if you're the type of person who doesn't enjoy running on their own or finds it quite hard to get out the door, it's so easy at uni because you're in such a bubble, living on campus or living in a house with people, and you're all so close to each other. It's just so easy to meet up for runs and things like that. So that's a really good part about university as well. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. I feel like I've rambled quite a bit, but that's the experiences I had at my university. Hopefully some other people can chat about theirs. Like, this is just my perspective from Loughborough, but it'd be good to hear from other people at other universities to see what they were like. But there you go, Matthew. Hope all's well. See you later.